to Epic Church. Hello, welcome. We are so happy that you are here with us. We have a lot of stuff going on, so we don't want to take up your time. You just fill out one of these cards and sign up to our newsletter, and you'll know exactly what's going on. You'll know more than you want to know. No, just kidding. It's all good. So that's the newsletter. Please sign up to that. There's so much stuff going on. There's a free concert right around the corner. We have a visioning session that you are invited to. There's going to be free food at that. All that information's up there, but I just want to share something with you that happened on Friday. It just happened on Friday, man, which is the day before today. Okay, it just happened. 2 weeks ago, some of you may know this, we had kind of a special meeting at our house. We had like 50 people packed in there. It was awful. No, it was great. It was great. And it was cool because you don't know this, but you have a building committee that's been working for 3 years, and they've been working hard, looking around, and in a week, there was an opportunity that came for a piece of property, 5 minutes north of Clearview. So it's good for these guys right here. Way to go. Bad for me. I go further. Anyway, so that happened. It's an impossible dream. I just want to tell you that right off the bat. It's impossible, but we want to be faithful. We don't want to be the generation that missed out on God's opportunity. And if we don't have the courage to do it, may there be another group with more courage to do it. So anyway, we wanted to be faithful. We wanted to push it. And so there's been a bunch of obstacles, just one after the other, and then there's been like a lot of like miracle things. I don't want to use the M word yet, but it's felt like that. And a couple of things are happening in Alberta that have never happened before that are coming together for this to happen. We even the conference has been working with us in like unusual ways. Okay, so all of that. At the business meeting, we voted to go ahead with this. To try, I think was what we And on Friday, we put an offer. We've been going back and forth. Turns out the person who owns it is a believer and kind of is on board with what our group does. So that really helped. And on Friday, they signed everything. So that's what this is what this means. On Friday, they signed everything. So we are now on the clock to come up for the necessary finances. We have the financing all set up. We just have to come up with the first 35%. And there's so much more to talk about that we're actually going to have a little meeting after. When you grab your food, I'll be up here. We'll do like a little presentation, fill you in on what's going on, more details. But this is what we're calling it. We're going to have 60 days to do this. If we get there sooner, we're just going to get on this piece of dirt even sooner, if that's God's will. There's a lot of obstacles. We actually just want to be faithful to what God is leading. So this is what we're calling it. Don't go to it yet, but almost. Okay, so for 70 years, there are 2 locations in the world that are called this. They're actually called ECB. EBC, Base Camp. Everest Base Camp. You can actually write a letter and send it to Base Camp, and it'll make it to Everest Base Camp. Now, what Everest Base Camp is, has anybody heard of Everest Base Camp before? Okay, it's actually a really cool place to visit. It's an international village that pops up. All people from all the world come to Base Camp for one thing. They're not coming to escape from their lives, from the world. They're actually coming because Base Camp prepares you for bigger things. You go to Base Camp to get sent to conquer mountains. You go to Base Camp not to get comfortable. It's very uncomfortable at Base Camp. It's already at major altitude. You go to Base Camp to dream, to find your purpose. That's the place on your journey where you get sent. So this next phase of our journey, now go for it, man. We're calling it Base Camp. These next 60 days, we're just going all in, and we're saying, if it's God's will, this money's gonna come. If it's God's will, come January, we're going to a pile of dirt covered in snow, and we're going, this is gonna be our base camp. It's not gonna be a comfortable place. It's not gonna be comfortable for a long time. But this is where God is gonna launch Epic for bigger things. This is when you're here and you dive into Epic. This is where you're gonna find something bigger, your dream, your purpose, and this is gonna be base camp. So EBC, man, it works so well. EBC, Epic Base Camp. So if you want right after. We'll tell you how to get involved. The strategy that we're going to take to do this money is we either make it or we don't. We're just going to try it. If you give us the money and we don't make it, you get your money back. That's how this is going to work. We just want to be faithful to what God is doing. It's up to Him. We just want to follow. We don't want to be the group that God gave an opportunity and we were too scared to dive in. So, base camp, epic. Stay tuned. More is coming. Also, there's food after this.
Let's continue our worship today. Great is your faithfulness, O God.
me, it was our family. A lot of you guys know that Christian got a new job, but the process to getting to the new job wasn't, looking back, probably it was smooth, but at the time it did not seem like a very smooth process. Back in June, Christian and I had been talking about how he wanted a new job, how working at Westridge Cabinets just wasn't quite the fit for our family anymore, and so he decided, just kind of on a whim, to put his resume out there, to look online and just see what was out there for his trade and the options that we might have. On the 5th of June, he found this job that was, on paper, it looked amazing. It was for, they were looking for a millwright or an industrial mechanic at the Red Deer Hospital. And reading the application, we're like, wow, this is amazing. This would be perfect. It fits for the time that he'd be able to work, from the Monday to Friday, and all of the perks that came with it was just what our family, what we were looking for. So he decided, you know what, we have nothing to lose. Why not? Let's apply for it. So he applied, and a lot of time went by, and we just kind of went on with life as usual, and we kind of figured the position had been filled because we hadn't heard back, and it was almost a full month had gone by. And on the 27th of June, he got a phone call, and it was for him to come in for an interview and for the hospital. And so we were super excited. Christian, of course, said yes. He was interested. He wanted to do this. So they set up an interview for a couple of weeks, or a week prior or so. 11 days after he agreed to having this interview, Westridge Cabinets announced that they were going bankrupt. And that they announced that on the end of work Monday, and that they announced that that Monday was the last week for everyone. So Christian had been working at Westridge at this point for 11 years. He started working there when he was 16. And for suddenly something that was so stable through his life, through our lives together, suddenly was just taken away. And that shook us. That shook our world. We were so uncertain now. But then at the same time, I was like, whoa, wait, you have this job interview. Like, this might be a God moment happening. Like, close one door, open another. I mean, like, I can connect those dots. This looks awesome. Like, I mean, it sucks that we're losing this job, but look at this opportunity. And so on the 11th of July, Christian went for his interview, and from what he told me, it went good. He was accepted well. He presented himself well. And so Christian went and talked to Westridge, and they agreed to let him work for a bit longer because they did still need him, because he was their industrial mechanic. He knew the machines, he knew how they worked, and they had orders they had to finish up, and they had to get the machines ready to be moved or sold and that sort of thing. So they allowed him to work a little bit longer, which right there was a blessing, because suddenly, I mean, we are a single family income, and the income was just taken away. So he worked there for 3 weeks. But for 3 weeks, we had no word from the hospital. He did his interview. They said, thank you very much. And that was it. So now we're like, well, did they get somebody else? Is this not what God wants? I mean, it looks like it, but now I don't know, because everything was moving so quickly, and then suddenly it just came to a halt. What's going on? And we were getting frustrated with each other. We were getting frustrated with God. I was getting so annoyed of this saying, let's pray about it. The last thing I wanted to do come week 3 was pray. I was so frustrated with God. He seemed to be working in such a good pace, and then suddenly it just like stopped. I'm like, okay, so now what? We can't just stop. We have kids. We've got a life. Like, we can't just halt and wait. But we did. So it was frustrating. And then on the 9th of August, I get a phone call from Christian, my son's sitting beside me, and he's, why are you crying, Mommy? I'm like, oh, these are happy tears. And he doesn't understand what happy tears are. He's 3, so he's just seeing Mommy cry. And so I'm trying to explain that Daddy's getting a new job, and this is all way over his head, but I'm just so excited. And so then after the excitement, I get this overwhelming feeling of shame. I knew better. I knew to trust God, and I didn't. And that was hard to swallow. That was hard to deal with, because I knew that we have this loving, trusting God. I was raised that way. Epic has instilled that in me so many times. And then when it came down to my moment to be that, have that trust and be that strong person in God, I wasn't. And that was embarrassing. It was just hard to finally look at myself and be like, wow, no, Kim, you don't got it. You don't got it yet. But I started to kind of understand the Israelites in the desert for 40 years. When I was a kid hearing that story, I was like, how dense are these people? Like, God has a pillar of fire right there. He does these amazing things. He literally speaks to you. And then weeks later, you're like, oh my goodness, where did God go? I don't know. I'm so scared. Let's go do this. And then God comes back in this big blatant way of another pillar and more speaking. And I was like, man, these people just don't understand. And then suddenly I'm like, whoa, no, I don't understand. I'm an Israelite. I didn't get it. And now I can understand how quickly it is for doubt and everything to just kind of creep in. But this whole process, that 3 weeks of growing pains and growing with God, was needed. It was something that I knew both of us, Christian and I, both needed in our relationship and our relationship with God. So it was a growing experience, and I'm happy for it now that I'm on the other side. But I am so grateful that we serve a God who is so patient and keeps working even when we are frustrated and we don't even want his help anymore, but he keeps going. So I'm just so grateful that we serve a God like that. So.
Thank you, Kim, for sharing that. Let's stand and sing praises to our King. And open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. Oh, I want has been on my mind a bit, and it comes from 2 Corinthians 3, verses 17 and 18. It says, "For the Lord is the Spirit, and wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." Amen. I want to read that part again. "For the Lord is the Spirit, and wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." So all of us who have had the veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like Him as we are changed into His glorious image. Let's sing, Holy Spirit. And there's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You are living hope. And I've tasted and seen surrender everything that we are to you. Because when things get tough, and they will get tough, you are the one that can pull us out of the holes. You are the one that is stretching out your arm to us. So as we invite the Holy Spirit into this place, as we continue on in our journey of the book of Acts, help us to remember that you haven't left us. You never have forsaken us. Your Holy Spirit is here. The presence is surrounding us. God, I just pray that you wrap your arms around Epic Church, the people that are here, that when they go out, people may notice that they are different, that they belong to a part of something, Lord, that you are in. And I ask all these things in your holy and most precious of names. Amen.
Sorry, Matthew. Always doing this to me. Thank you so much for being here today and journeying with us right now. We're in the book of Acts, and the book of Acts ends in a mystery. You don't know if the movement of Jesus is going to continue. It ends in Acts 28. So we're saying we want to be part of this legacy in Acts with courage and humility, and we want to be Acts 29. Today we're going to be looking in Acts chapter 10. So if you have your Bibles with you, your phone, Torah scroll, whatever you do, open it to Acts chapter 10. That's what we're going to be in today. Before we dive in, though, just to let you know that the book of Acts is so unlikely. The entire thing is just so unlikely that the story of Jesus would change the world. That's it. That's what the book of Acts is saying. Could a story of a man who claimed he was God, who rose from the dead, who is love, can that change the world? And the book of Acts is saying that time after time, this one story will change the world. And so we come to the book of Acts in Acts 10, and we find that there's a major obstacle to telling this story. And that's what Acts chapter 10 is going to be talking about. It's a three-part story, okay? So we're just going to look at each part and then make some comments about it. Okay, part number one, here we go. Good. Okay, story begins with someone who's never supposed to hear about Jesus. If you can think of someone who's the furthest away from any kind of God experience, it's this guy right here. His name is Cornelius, and he's a Roman soldier. There's actual documentation that the Italian regiment was in there. We can actually find historical evidence that this guy was actually there in Caesarea in his story, okay? So he's the furthest you can be, because if you're a centurion, you have to be part of something called the imperial cult. This means that you believe that the empire, right, that Caesar is God, and you have to say that. So right away, it's like, really? This guy's going to be in this conversation? Because it's not telling us that he's stopping that. He's still part of the imperial cult, all right? And here's one of the great things about being a centurion. You're in charge of 100 people or so, but you're actually not a centurion because you're strong. Check this out. This is a quote from one of the writers. Centurions are not desired to be overbold or reckless or strong. They just have to be good leaders. They don't have to be prone to acts they don't have to be offensive in their fighting. They don't have to be brave, but able to, when overwhelmed and hard-pressed, to stand fast and die at their post. So the thing that you had going for you, if you were a centurion, is you were always willing to die at your post. If you were told to defend something, all of your men could run, but the centurion, they were there to die at their post. So this is this guy, but somehow the story says that the centurion, Cornelius, is a God-fearer. And then it says that he prays, and it says that he gives to the poor. Okay? This is a scenario that's happening. Cornelius is part of a whole other religion, and yet he's still trying to be spiritual and find God. Something about that isn't meeting his needs, and he's trying. He's not getting all the way. He's only praying, and he's only giving alms, right? Giving to the poor. He's trying. I want you to know, like, if we picture this nowadays, this is Cornelius trying to find God through some other method, trying maybe some yoga, maybe trying to find God in nature. He's really desiring something here. It is very imperfect. Can I say it like that? This is where Cornelius is. And then this is what happens. It says that as he's trying to pray, by the way, he's not praying at the right times. No one's taught him how to pray. What he's trying to think, one of these times, an angel appears to Cornelius and says, ooh, is that for dramatic effect? Should I try another mic? No. Oh, it's upstairs. Na si venya. Okay, sorry. I couldn't resist. All right. So somehow, while he's praying, an angel appears to Cornelius, and it says, Cornelius, God has seen what you're doing. There's a guy in the town over in Joppa. Go get him. His name is Peter. He's staying in the house of Simon the tanner. So Cornelius responds right away. He sends 2 servants, a soldier, to go get Peter and bring him back. He doesn't hesitate at all. Okay? This is a very unlikely person to hear the story of Jesus. So we fast forward. We have these 3 guys who, by the way, are now about to do a forced march through the night. This is 30 miles. They're going to walk 30 miles because it tells us that they arrive the next day at noon. So through the night, orders of their captain, they arrive in Joppa. Meanwhile, second part of the story. Here is Peter. Peter's one of these people that actually saw Jesus. Okay? Peter is staying at Simon the tanner's house. This is a guy who works with skins, animal skins. And it says that in the middle of the day, he goes up to the roof on the top. Sometimes they would have a little shelter there, and people could relax, and he begins to pray. It says it's about noon, and he begins to pray. But downstairs, they're making a little something to eat. All right, they're massaging the chickens down there. Like, it'll be over soon, chicken. Right? Like they're stirring something. Something spicy, right? Yeah, you feeling this yet? Yeah? They're baking the bread. Getting crispy. Sizzling the matzah. The smells are going up, and they're hitting Peter as he's up there praying. He's like, dear Lord. Oh, okay, sorry. Sometimes that happens here at Epic Church. We have the food waft in, and you're like, you completely check out. And he's just like, dear Jesus. Oh, man, was that jerk chicken, Lord? Oh, man, what were we talking about? This is what's going on. This hunger is overwhelming. And God's watching Peter, and God's like, okay, this is the perfect time to have a little conversation with Peter. And it says that he goes into a trance, which is like a funny way to say vision. He sees something out of the ordinary. This is what it says in verse 10. He says he fell into a trance. So he's not asleep. He's seeing this. And he saw heaven opened, and an object like a great sheet bound at the 4 corners descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of 4-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean." And a voice spoke to him again the second time, "What God has cleansed, you must not call common." This was done 3 times, and the object was taken up to heaven. We have to acknowledge that this is strange. It's a bed sheet with all the animals of the forest inside. And then there's a random voice that says, get up, kill it, eat it. All right? If this isn't making sense to you, that's great, because it made no sense to Peter. It actually uses this word. It says at the end that Peter was greatly puzzled. That is a strong word. In the Greek right there, this is saying that this hurt Peter's brain. That Peter went, what was that? It's actually giving us a little glimpse, by the way, as to how to approach the Bible, even how to approach understanding God. That sometimes it's going to require a little thinking. That God actually says in the scriptures, come, let us reason together. And if you're ever in a conversation and it has to do with God, and you go, man, this I kind of don't understand right now, that's good. That's okay. It happens all the time in the Bible. People come to Jesus, he drops some truth on them, and they would go, we don't get it. And some people just like exit. No. He says, go ahead, reason with me. So he's puzzling, he's struggling with this. Here's the problem. Here's why Peter's struggling with this. Peter has grown up his whole life knowing that he can't eat certain animals. Okay, we have it Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14. Some animals are called clean and unclean. Okay, for him, this has been his whole life. Some people nowadays still do this. They do it for health reasons. And also these Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14, they weren't just for Jews. They happened even at the time of Noah, before the whole thing even takes off. So anyway, he grows up with this. But it's so much more. It's so much more. It's not just food to Peter. It's who he is. Okay, when Peter went to church as a little kid, these are the kind of stories he would hear. There's a guy named Eliezer. We have this in 2 Maccabees. It's a book. It's not in the Bible, but it's a book that Peter would have been familiar with. Eliezer was forced by the Greeks to eat pork. All right? A little bit of bacon, a Whopper, whatever. All right? And this is what it says, 2 Maccabees 6:19. But he, welcoming death with honor rather than life with pollution, went up to the rack of his own accord, spitting out the flesh, as all ought to go who have the courage to refuse things that are not right. Okay, that's the tame version. Chapter 7, the next chapter, by the way, 3 chapters in Maccabees go to this. Chapter 7, the next chapter talks about a mother who has 7 kids. We have kids here, okay. I won't get very detailed. 7 kids. And the long story is, they're all asked to eat porky, and all of them refuse and are all put to sleep in very detailed, gruesome ways. And all of them get to say one word before they die, and they all basically kind of go, I'm so proud I did this. And the mom is also goes away as well to the farm. Yes, to the farm. Here's the deal. This thing is so strong in his identity that Peter, we're not thinking about, like, it's hard to think about Peter saying no to God. He's getting a command from God. He's not saying, oh, this is not God. He knows it's God. He's straight up saying no to God. Because this is so deep. It runs so deep in his veins, right? Okay, so what's going on? But on the other hand, sometimes in the scriptures, God makes all sorts of strange requests. Did you know that? Like, this is nothing. At one time, there's a guy who's called to marry a harlot, a prostitute. God commanded that. What? By the way, he's not commanding you right now. Another guy, Isaiah, is commanded to walk around naked for 3 years. Guys, this is in the Bible. Naked for 3 years. One guy is asked to sacrifice his son. These are God's commands. So, I mean, this is just a mixed bag. All right, so Peter is greatly puzzled, really struggling with this. We'll finish the story here. Third part. The 3 men show up that Cornelius has sent. Boom, boom, boom. They knock on the door. They're smelly. They've been walking through the night. Is Peter here? Peter invites them in. Peter goes with them. The next day, I mean, these poor servants, they just did 30 miles through the night. The Bible tells us that the next day they take off 30 miles back.
to make it to the other side. They're like, man, we're not getting paid enough to be servants. And they walk in the door, and this is the first statement that Peter says when he sees Cornelius, who can't be bothered to walk 30 miles. Okay, 28, then he said to them, you know how unlawful it is for a Jewish man to keep company. Why is he talking about company now? With or to go to one of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. What? End of the story, 34. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, in truth, I perceive that God shows no partiality. Other versions say that God shows no favoritism. I'm sorry, what is going on with this story? I thought we were talking about eating piggy. Now we're talking about meeting and hanging out with people. What is going on? But this isn't actually where the story ends. You go to the next chapter, and when Peter gets back, he's in major trouble from other people in the church. And they're actually upset, not at the vision. They're not upset at the fact that he was told to kill and eat. They're upset that he talked to Cornelius at all. And then Peter, this is what it says. And when Peter came to Jerusalem, those of the circumcision contended with him, saying, you went into an uncircumcised man and ate with them? And then it goes on. They were upset at who he was with. So what is going on in this story? Let's just dive right in, okay? It's going to feel like a lot of info, but remember, it's okay to be puzzled. All right, we'll read it again. Here we go. Verse 10, he fell into a trance and saw heaven open, and an object like a great sheep bound at the four corners, ascending to him and let down to earth. In it, all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came, rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean. And a voice spoke to him again the second time, what God has cleansed, you must not call common. This was done 3 times, and he was taken up to heaven. The words that are used to describe what's in the sheet are the exact same words we find in Genesis when it's talking about creation. The point, all kinds of animals were in there. Alligators, delicious turtles, not the chocolate kind, ostriches, chickens, sheep, giraffe. That would be awkward for the giraffe. All kinds of animals. It's using that language as birds, creeping things. The whole thing is coming in. Here in the sheet are both clean and unclean animals. Okay, just to give you the 10-second version of clean and unclean. An example of a clean animal has to have a split hoof. Example of a clean animal is a sheep. According to Leviticus, you can chow down on sheep whenever you want. All right. An example of an unclean animal is a vulture. It just eats, what's that word called? Leftovers of animals. Carrion. Right, scavengers, the scavenger. Okay, that's an example. Both of those kinds are in the sheet, and Peter refuses all of them. Why is he refusing all of them? He's both refusing the clean and the unclean animal. Because to Peter, the only temptation for food would have been the clean animals. To a Jew, it's not even a conversation to say, eat this crocodile. It's just, they wouldn't even perceive it as food. They would perceive it as a non-food item. The only way this conversation makes sense is Peter perceives the clean animals as food. And they're there, and he's still saying no to them. Not so, Lord. I have never eaten anything common or unclean. What God has cleansed, at the end says, you shall not call common. Okay, so there's actually 2 words there. Common or unclean. Unclean, we've talked about it. This is Leviticus 11. Certain animals, God calls unclean. Okay? Peter would have known that. And then he does a brand new word, common. Some of your versions will have impure in there or something like that. But common, it's a brand new word. Peter is calling the clean animals, he's calling them common, and he's not touching them. What's going on? It turns out, Peter's time, this is a brand new word that's made up around Peter's time. It's actually made up by the Pharisees. We have this in the Maccabean period, about 160 years before Jesus shows up. There's this belief that comes up, okay? It's a belief that if something unclean touches something clean, that now that it used to be unclean is called common, and you have to treat it as though it's unclean. So it says, basically, if you have a sheep, and your sheep goes up to a pig and goes like, "Hey pig, what's up?" And they start rubbing shoulders. Man, my illustrations are bad. That sheep is now called common, and you can't eat it, even though it's clean. This is a whole new belief system that comes out with the Pharisees, which is why these two words are being used, common and unclean, all right? So it has to do with association, some kind of uncleanliness by association, okay? So the question you should be asking is, why would they make this rule up? Why would you even have this conversation at all? It sounds to us, I think the technical biblical word is silly. Okay? This is why. To be safe. To be safe. It's right here. It's right here. Aristeas. The very purpose of the purity rules are to create impregnable ramparts and walls of iron to protect Israel from mingling with the other nations. It's actually kind of coming from a good place, sort of. It's saying, you know what? This is sin over here. So we're going to put a little barrier here that we can't even touch sin, because then you become common. It's a whole other barrier that happens. It actually comes from a good place to keep evil out of the church. It's coming from a good, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, that is so weird. But you know what? We do it all the time. Hey, you don't hang out with that person. They're evil. Your friends have to be good friends. It's not as simple as it sounds, right? Because actually, don't hang out with that person. They might influence you. But also, you should hang out with that person. You see what's going on here? They make the decision that, no, we will stay one whole thing away. And as a nation, Israel at that time has decided to be safe, to be comfortable. Okay? The story continues. Verse 44. This is Peter speaking to Cornelius in front of Cornelius. While Peter was still speaking these words, the Holy Spirit came on all who heard the message. The circumcised believers who had come with Peter were astonished that the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured out even on the Gentiles, on the common, for they heard them speaking in tongues and praising God. Then Peter said, "Can anyone keep these people from being baptized with water? They have received the Holy Spirit just as we have." This is saying people were still a little ambiguous here. And God's like, okay, let me make it very clear. I have no favorites. I love everyone. Everyone gets my spirit. Even those who are awkwardly looking for me, who are just trying to be spiritual, I meet them where they are and they get my spirit. They don't have to believe everything in order to belong in my group. As long as they look up to me, as long as they cry out to me, they get my blessing, they get my spirit. And whatever rules have come up in your religion, that is not my concern. You get my spirit. I have no favorites. That's God's passion. And God, in Acts, is trying to grab that church that is now getting stuck a little bit. And he's trying to say, actually, you should love everyone. If your church starts looking the same and everyone's kind of talking the same, everyone's looking the same, you're missing the point. You need to be going with things that are different, outside of your comfort zone. That's what he's saying. So there's one word I just want to throw at you right now. It's the most common word in this whole story. It's with. With. Almost every sentence has the word with. In the Greek, it comes even a little bit more. This is what it's saying. He's going to go have come together with the Gentiles. Peter will live with. They gather together and were with each other. Here's what's happening. In this story, the mission of the church is given. It's called the with principle. We are meant to be with everyone. And if anything comes in the way of the with principle, the story of Jesus is stopped. And here's a good question. Are we regularly rubbing shoulders with those that are different than us? Because I tell you what, it's so much easier to hang out with people that look and talk and believe the same things that you do. Yeah. If there is a community that says that we all have to believe a certain way, we have to look a certain way, that is not a community of Jesus. I just want you to know that I go to a lot of churches, and most churches in Alberta today are homogenous. That means that everyone's from a certain ethnicity, or everyone's from a certain age group, or everyone's from a certain socioeconomic background. It's the natural thing that we do as humans. Who is like me? And yet this story is throwing it for a loop, and it's saying, no. You must actively be looking for those that are different. You must actively be in relationships with those that make you a tiny bit uncomfortable. You must actively search people that believe different than you. And they belong before they ever believe. And they're part of this the moment that they look at me. This is the story we have here. So we have this saying in our vision: we are radically inclusive. We are radically inclusive. What does that mean? It means that I just want you to look around. It means that we're not all the same. Everyone is part of this family, and we do not look the same. We do not have the same backgrounds. We are not all the same ages, because this is what is in Acts. This is Acts 29. The church of Jesus will be different. Will be different. Will be different. That's where God is celebrated. All right, so I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, okay, I get it. I've heard this message before. Hang out with people that are different. Okay, I kind of see that. But you know what? No. You know what? That's kind of not my personality. And I get that. And yeah, you know what? I actually don't even have time. I barely have time to talk to my one friend that I have. Like, that's real, okay? I want to give you hope right now, okay? Beginning of the story, it says, Peter was staying at the house of Simon the tanner. To you and me, we hear that and we go, all right, sweet. At the time, in the Talmud, it says, woe to him who is a tanner by trade. And it goes on to say, it's a demeaning trade. Here's what's happening. According to Jewish standards at that time, to be a tanner was to be perpetually unclean, because you were always working with dead bodies. To be a tanner was seen as the lowest possible profession. And the story begins with Peter going to a Jewish house. Simon is a Jew. And he's going, who is the most different of the Jews that I know, the people that I'm comfortable with right now? Who is it? Oh, it's this guy, Simon the tanner, who most religious people will actually look down. And he makes it a point to stay at his house. Here's what's happening. Peter's making baby steps to show Jesus, to reflect who Jesus really was. Baby steps by staying at Simon the tanner. It's huge. And then not just that. Then he gives us the last clue. It says, who was at Joppa. The last time that Joppa, that town, is mentioned in the Bible, it happens to another guy whose name was Jonah. And Jonah had a command from God to go to the most different nation in the world, Ninevites. Completely opposite in their belief system, completely opposite in the way they look, policies, everything. And he was to go to them and tell them about the love of Jesus. And the book of Jonah never finishes the story. It says that Jonah goes there, has a fit, eaten by a fish, has another fit, and then it never finishes the story. This story right here is finishing the story of Jonah. God comes back. Someone in the city of Joppa. Someone baby steps to be different. And God shows up and he says, we need to finish the story. Are you going to go to what makes you uncomfortable? Are you going to cross those lines and show people my love, how I feel, that you are actively going to engage with the most distant person from God you can think of, a centurion whose religion is so awkward right now? Are you going to do that? This is the end of the story of Jonah, and the guy steps up, and he does it. So baby steps. God honors baby steps. Here's just one practical thing I'll give you, and then we'll wrap it up. One practical thing in the process, and then we'll wrap it up. The WIF principle. What can you walk away with right now? Here it is. Do what you love to do. Okay? Is that okay? Is that good? Do what you love to do. I know there are some knitters in here. Yeah. Where are my knitters at? Shouldn't have said that. All right. I know there are some people here that play ball and some that pretend to. But you love to do it. Okay? There are some cookers here. They're magical cookeries. There are some gamers here. All right? There are some pumping iron people. Gun show over there. There are some book lovers here. Do what you love to do, but do it with someone different than you. Someone who's different. Another way of saying this is do it with an unbeliever, someone who doesn't have a relationship with Jesus. Do what you love to do and do it with an unbeliever. That's it. That's it. That's the WIF principle. Whatever it is, just do what you love to do and do it with someone who hasn't heard the story of Jesus. That's it. You have no agenda. You're not actually there to give them a story. You're not there to preach. You're not there to say, come. Nothing. It's with. It's with. This is the WIF principle. Do what you love to do. I'll finish with this. Mahatma Gandhi. You guys know Gandhi? A short haircut? Okay. Mahatma Gandhi in his autobiography has a story. It says when he was in school studying to be a lawyer in England, he actually picks up the Bible and he reads the Gospels. And the Jesus that he reads in the Gospels is the Jesus who crosses cultural lines. It's the Jesus that elevates women when they weren't being elevated. It's the Jesus who actually leaves Israel, goes to another country, Syrophoenicia. He crosses lines. He has old people in his group. He has young people in his group. He's got the whole thing. And he gets this idea. He says, wow, my country right now in India at that time, very divided with the caste system. He's like, what if the story of Jesus can make the difference and bring us together? This is what he says in his autobiography. One Sunday, he attended church service and decided to ask the minister, this is how he asked, I would like enlightenment about Jesus. That's what he said. But when Gandhi entered the sanctuary, this is a long time ago, not that long ago, the ushers refused to give him a seat and suggested that he go elsewhere to worship with his own kind. He left and never came back. He says, if Christians have caste differences also, I might as well remain a Hindu. The story of Cornelius, this is huge, man. The followers of Jesus were not called to be a safe organization. It's not meant to be a comfortable experience. It's meant to be a movement that takes his story, takes his love, his compassion to the different, to the broken, that when you look around and you see this right now, this is the expression of Jesus. That there are people here that would not be friends except for Jesus. Did you know that? That warms my heart. There are people here that would never cry except for Jesus. That's the point of the story of Jesus. And this movement is to go forward, and God will honor every single step that we do. We are not perfect there. We are not there yet. But God honors every time we take a step. He shows up, and he honors that. And there are people right now who are desperately crying out for God, who are crying for something they can't even express, and God honors that. And God is saying, I'm moving. I want to you. I want you to see my love. I want you to experience my love. I want you to experience community. And that's the story of Cornelius. Will we have the courage to go forward?
Let's stand and sing as we close. You stood before creation. Eternity. have food next door, and it's haystacks. So I know a lot of people like that, so please join us next door. We're going to continue singing here with a couple more songs, so you're welcome to join us and keep singing. Have a blessed Sabbath. darkness closes in, and you are hope, you are hope, and you have covered all my sin. And you are peace, when my fear is crippling, and you are true, even in my wandering. And you are joy, you're the reason that I sing. And you are life, in you death has lost its sting. I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough, and nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. Sing, you are more. And you are more than my words will ever say. You are Lord, and all creation will proclaim that you are here, in your presence I'm made whole. You are God, of all else I'm letting go. I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. And my heart will sing no other name, Jesus, Jesus. And my heart will sing no other name, Jesus. My heart will sing, and my heart will sing no other name, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, once again. And my heart will sing no other name than Jesus. Oh, Jesus. I'm running to your arms. And I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. And I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever And I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out.